Well, I think it's safe to say we didn't see that coming, but what a finale to an epic season. I'm Al, as always, this is the Geek in Review, so let's get to it. This episode opened with a very 2001 feel. We're getting a whole overview of the entire multiverse, with some pop culture references and of course some Marvel ones as well. And I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get that fantastic opening music that we've been used to the last few weeks, because I've enjoyed a lot about this season of Loki, or the first season of Loki, because spoiler alert, it's getting a second one, and the music is one of the main aspects. It totally draws you in straight away. And as always with these shows, there's a ton of Easter eggs, and I know I say this all the time, but Marvel are playing fast and loose with their character origins as well, with He Who Remains. Now I'm going to go into this in a separate video about what I think's going on with He Who Remains, or Kang. But yeah, this was interesting that they introduced this so early in this stage of Marvel, or this phase of Marvel. We knew that we were going to get Kang, we didn't know when, and he did pop up in this episode, or did he? Because it isn't really the definitive Kang. Now, this isn't the Kang from the comics, as always, and I know I say it all the time, Marvel are playing fast and loose with their origin stories, but this is just a version of Kang, and he does even go into detail and explain exactly what happened during the multiverse war as well, and I have mentioned this in my previous videos, but it is a bit of a Jet Li the One scenario, in that this version that we're seeing is the one that has survived, and he set up the TVA to control the timeline to make sure that there aren't any further branches and another devastating multiverse war. Because if you've got one genius across multiverses, then you've also got evil geniuses as well, and he explains that that's sort of what happened, and that was the main issue that was causing this friction within the multiverse. But the fact that when they arrive at the Citadel and Miss Minutes offers Loki everything that he's wanted, to take Asgard, to take Earth, to kill Thanos, to get the Infinity Gauntlets, suggested to me that, I don't know, maybe the timelines weren't that set in stone anyway, because if he can offer to do all that and change all those events that would affect millions, if not billions of people, I guess everything isn't as set in stone as the series has initially set out, but I guess we're going to get more of that in season 2. And speaking of which, I'm not shocked that we're getting a season 2. Clocking in at just under 50 minutes, I knew as soon as I looked at this episode on the Disney screen that we weren't going to get all the answers. And while I thought this episode was a pretty good finale for the first season, what happened here is going to be huge for the MCU going forward. I mean, I've got no idea how or if this is going to tie into Spider-Man No Way Home. It's pretty clear that it is going to tie it into Doctor Strange. The hints in the name, sadly, that we knew that this was coming. Why couldn't they just call it Doctor Strange 2? But they've ruined it all for us, which is a little unlike Marvel. But I have to say, the reason that I think that they are being a bit so heavy-handed with the multiverse, and especially this early on, is it's a new concept. After 10 years of all these films coming out back to back and being in chronological order, apart from Captain Marvel leading up to Endgame, we knew, or we could have a very good guess about what's going to happen next. But when we go into the multiverse, it's going to get crazy. So Marvel are paving the way here with some pretty good storytelling, just to let us know or give us a hint about what's going to happen before the entire crazy multiverse comes at us in the next Doctor Strange film. And speaking of the multiverse, when, I'm just going to call him Kang instead of He Who Remains, is telling the two Lokis, or Loki and Sylvie, about himself. She asks who is he, and he says a ruler, a conqueror. But he might not mean that that's him, he might mean that those are other versions of himself, so that's something to think on as well. But yeah, the shock that the TVA exists to prevent further multiverse wars was very interesting, and I wonder how big a part the TVA is going to play in the next Marvel phase or the next few films going forward. I can't particularly see them popping up, and I certainly can't really see Mobius or any of the characters that we've seen in this season so far. But one thing I noticed about this episode, especially the first half, is Loki doesn't say much at all. When Kang shows up and he's trying to explain everything, he just kind of sits there, and even when Sylvie's being a bit aggressive with him, Loki isn't saying very much. And I think that's because he knew that he was out of his depth, that this power, or this potential power that he could wield, was so far ahead of him that he was scared about what was going to happen next. And that's kind of what did happen. Loki didn't want to really upset the balance. And I do have a lot of questions about his initial motivations on this, but I just want to talk about some highlights of this episode, or at least what stood out for me. Because to be honest, the first 2 episodes of this season I thought were phenomenal. 3 and 4 did drag a little bit. 5 I was kind of indifferent about, and 6 was the one that really got it back on track. And after 10 years of seeing Loki in the MCU, we actually get him being honest for once and telling us what he wants, which is for Sylvie to be safe. And it means so much to her that they kiss, and that's a kind of level of looking Liam weirdness, because they are the same person but they're not really. And I don't think this relationship is going to work. Certainly the way that the series set up the relationship, it didn't work for me. I mean, if you're involved with a relationship with yourself, what does that say about you? And looking back at Loki over the years, he hasn't really had any interaction or any deep interaction with female characters that weren't his mother or Black Widow in the first Avengers. And again, we're not going to get into that one too much. But the big question that this season drops is, what has happened? When Loki arrives back at the TVA, no one seems to know who he is. So has his timeline been deleted? Has he been deleted? Or is this brand new? We do see the Kang statue replacing the Timekeepers. So is that going to be the big villain for the next season, or the going forward in the MCU? I think Kang, personally for me, is probably going to be the next Thanos. And what we're getting here is just a little hint setting up about what's going to come over the next few years. They did do the same with Thanos, if you look back, that we didn't really get a good look at the definitive villain up until Infinity War. And again, while this is a version of Kang, this isn't Kang the Conqueror, or at the very least I don't believe it's the Kang the Conqueror that's going to be the big bad in the MCU going forward. I did really enjoy this episode, and overall this season of Loki did pay off in a lot more ways than I thought it was going to, especially when it got to the halfway point. I thought, they've ruined it, I've got no idea what they're going to do. I think season 2, they're probably going to take a lot more chances, and as always, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm going to do a bit more of a breakdown on Kang the Conqueror and Loki and his history in the MCU, so keep a lookout for that in the next few weeks. But let me know what you think of the last episode of Loki and the season overall. You can reach me in the comments below, or if you have Twitter, you can follow me and reach me there at The Geeks Reviews. If you have enjoyed this video, leave a like, or if you haven't, leave a dislike. That's perfectly fine as well. You're entitled to your own opinion, but it would mean a lot if you hit subscribe and supported the channel. My name's Al, this has been The Geek in Review. Thanks for watching.